Here the student is not only the dreamer, but also the doer who is proud of making things happen. Andalas University is committed to realizing its vision of becoming a leader in innovative university education by integrating learning, industry, and community. University always encourages lecturers to create innovations based on science and technology, which are then delivered to the community through research institutions and community service. Andalas University applies continuous quality improvement, improving internal quality through conducting internal quality audits, and designing a curriculum that meets the needs of stakeholders, that is, the world of work and industry. In an effort to produce graduates who are highly competitive, Andalas University also prioritizes entrepreneurship education for students. In an effort to be an international campus, Andalas University is preparing to become a state university. Various efforts to this end continue to be conducted. Students are given the opportunity to realize the issues faced by their communities. We encourage our students to help and serve others by offering them opportunities to go out and match their skills and abilities to the needs out there. We are proud to have created the university that we have today. All of these things increasingly encourage Andalas University to continuously develop itself to provide high-quality education for the glory of the nation.
Sejak COVID-19 ini datang, aku dan keluargaku tidak bisa kemana-mana. Hanya TV dan handphone yang jadi hiburan setiap hari. Karena corona, semua rencana liburan kami pun jadi berantakan. Aku sangat ingin kembali menikmati indahnya suasana sunset di pantai bersama keluargaku. Menikmati hawa sejuk dengan pemandangan yang indah, hingga menikmati berbagai kuliner khas bersama mereka. Sungguh, aku merindukan Sumatera Barat, ranah Minang nan elok. Semoga pandemi ini segera berakhir, dan aku bisa membawa keluargaku berlibur ke sana. Ya, mengobati segala kejenuhan. Pesona keindahan alam yang menyatu dengan seni dan budayanya benar-benar sulit untuk dilupakan. Sumatera Barat, tunggu aku.
West Sumatra, famous for its ancient history, echoing through its canyons. Wonderful contours formed by the tectonic slabs, with fertile volcanic land crossed by West Sumatra, famous for its ancient history, echoing through its canyons. Wonderful contours formed by the tectonic slabs, with fertile volcanic land crossed by the grandeur of Bukit Barisan. Ageless natural beauty is felt every step we walk and every sight we see, leaving behind countless tales of myths, hard to be neglected. Catch the beauty of Lake Maninjau. Wonderful landscape is witnessed when we fly over the top of Lawang Hill. Priceless high elevated adventure. Paddling together around Singkarak Lake. Experience the phenomenon of walking on the living bridge, while the waterfall refreshes the travelers. Evolving with time, without letting go of the inscribed history. Villagers keeping their joyous traditions Pacu Jawi, which means cow race. The elegance of martial art, Silek. Visiting the Pagariun Palace. Acknowledge the culture history of Minangkabau. The enchanting plate dance will greet guests, exposing their striking physical and vulnerability. Taste the various traditional culinary of West Sumatra. Padang main dishes uniquely served to your table, well known for their savory and spicy flavors, while cakes and beverages are exceptional. The spicy balado cassava chips, and of course, the legendary delicious satay padang. Delight in the beauty of silver crafts in an elegant ivory nuance. Try on the rich, colorful sun-kit fabrics and carefully attempt to knit in this house of weaving. A new experience you can bring home. Take steps through a history. From Japan's bunker to the biggest coal mining in its era. Encounter the splendor of West Sumatra and merge into its glorious beauty. With the power of history flawlessly intertwined with the wonders of nature. Wonderful Indonesia.
Sejak COVID-19 ini datang, aku dan keluargaku tidak bisa kemana-mana. Hanya TV dan handphone yang jadi hiburan setiap hari. Karena corona, semua rencana liburan kami pun jadi berantakan. Aku sangat ingin kembali menikmati indahnya suasana sunset di pantai bersama keluargaku. Menikmati hawa sejuk dengan pemandangan yang indah, hingga menikmati berbagai kuliner khas bersama mereka. Sungguh, aku merindukan Sumatera Barat, ranah Minang nan elok. Semoga pandemi ini segera berakhir, dan aku bisa membawa keluargaku berlibur ke sana. Ya, mengobati segala kejenuhan. Pesona keindahan alam yang menyatu dengan seni dan budayanya benar-benar sulit untuk dilupakan. Sumatera Barat, tunggu aku.
West Sumatra. Famous for its ancient history, echoing through its canyons. Wonderful contours formed by the tectonic slabs, with fertile volcanic land crossed by the grandeur of Bukit Barisan. Ageless natural beauty is felt every step we walk and every sight we see, leaving behind countless tales of myths, hard to be neglected. Catch the beauty of Lake Maninjau. Wonderful landscape is witnessed when we fly over the top of Lawang Hill. Priceless high elevated adventure. Paddling together around Singkarak Lake. Experience the phenomenon of walking on the living bridge, while the waterfall refreshes the travelers. Evolving with time, without letting go of the inscribed history. Villagers keeping their joyous traditions. Pacu Jawi, which means cow race. The elegance of martial art, Silek. Visiting the Pagariun Palace. Acknowledge the culture history of Minangkabau. The enchanting plate dance will greet guests, exposing their striking physical and vulnerability. Taste the various traditional culinary of West Sumatra. Padang main dishes uniquely served to your table, well known for their savory and spicy flavors, while cakes and beverages are exceptional. The spicy balado cassava chips, and of course, the legendary delicious satay padang. Delight in the beauty of silver crafts in an elegant ivory nuance. Try on the rich, colorful sun-kit fabrics and carefully attempt to knit in this house of weaving. A new experience you can bring home. Take steps through a history, from Japan's bunker to the biggest coal mining in its era. Encounter the splendor of West Sumatra and merge into its glorious beauty. With the power of history flawlessly intertwined with the wonders of nature. Wonderful Indonesia.
Sejak COVID-19 ini datang, aku dan keluargaku tidak bisa kemana-mana. Hanya TV dan handphone yang jadi hiburan setiap hari. Karena corona, semua rencana liburan kami pun jadi berantakan. Aku sangat ingin kembali menikmati indahnya suasana sunset di pantai bersama keluargaku. Menikmati hawa sejuk dengan pemandangan yang indah hingga menikmati berbagai kuliner khas bersama mereka. Sungguh, aku merindukan Sumatera Barat, ranah Minang nan elok. Semoga pandemi ini segera berakhir dan aku bisa membawa keluargaku berlibur ke sana. Ya, mengobati segala kejenuhan. Pesona keindahan alam yang menyatu dengan seni dan budayanya benar-benar sulit untuk dilupakan. Sumatera Barat, tunggu aku.
West Sumatra, famous for its ancient history, echoing through its canyons. Wonderful contours formed by the tectonic slabs, with fertile volcanic land crossed by the grandeur of Bukit Barisan. Ageless natural beauty is felt every step we walk and every sight we see, leaving behind countless tales of myths, hard to be neglected. Catch the beauty of Lake Maninjau. Wonderful landscape is witnessed when we fly over the top of Lawang Hill. Priceless high elevated adventure. Paddling together around Singkarak Lake. Experience the phenomenon of walking on the living bridge, while the waterfall refreshes the travelers. Evolving with time, without letting go of the inscribed history. Villagers keeping their joyous traditions. Pachujawi, which means cow race. The elegance of martial art, Silek. Visiting the Pagariun Palace. Acknowledge the culture history of Minangkabau. The enchanting plate dance will greet guests, exposing their striking physical and vulnerability. Taste the various traditional culinary of West Sumatra. Padang main dishes uniquely served to your table, well known for their savory and spicy flavors, while cakes and beverages are exceptional. The spicy balado cassava chips, and of course, the legendary delicious satay.
International Conference on Educational Development and Quality Assurance 2020. My name is Muslima, today's Master of Ceremony. Before the event begins, we would like to remind everyone to mute the microphone, switch the mobile phone into silent mode, use your headset, and please obey the COVID-19 protocol. When we sing Indonesia Raya, the audience could remain seated. Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third International Conference on Educational Development and Quality Assurance 2020. With the topic today, Quality Assurance on Merdeka Belajar, giving students more control over their learning experience. The Honorable Rector of Universitas Andalas on this occasion, represented by the Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, Professor Dr. Mansyurdin MS. The Honorable Keynote Speakers, Professor Dr. Insinyur Marsudi Kisworo, Professor Rosina Jamaluddin, Profesor Dr. Chris Roberts, Dr. Abdul Khalik A. Al-Kahtani, Dr. Kirutika Ragupati, Profesor Dr. E.P.T. Hendi Lusida, Forum Penjaminan Mutu BKS PTN Barat, distinguished guests and participants gathering for the opening ceremony of the third ICED-QA 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, praise be to Allah, the Almighty God, for giving us a blessed opportunity to join our event today, Thursday, October 27, 2020. To start our event, let's sing the national anthem, Indonesia Raya. Ladies and gentlemen, our next agenda, speech from the head of the conference committee. Please welcome Dr. Yose Ramda Ilhami.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to thank God for this opportunity standing here as a part of International Conference on Educational Development and Quality Assurance, ICED-QA, the third 2020. May the blessing of Allah, the Almighty, upon us. Salawat and salam always be given to our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. A very good morning, Honorable Rector and Vice Rector of Universitas Andalas, Honorable Head of Senate of Universitas Andalas, Honorable Dean from Faculty across Universitas Andalas, Honorable Rector of University in West Sumatra, Honorable Professor, College, and audience, distinguished delegates and participants, ladies and gentlemen. We are delighted to welcome you virtually to the third International Conference on Educational Development and Quality Assurance, ICED-QA 2020, held by Lembaga Pengembangan Pendidikan dan Penjaminan Mutu, LP3M, the Institute for Educational Development and Quality Assurance, Universitas Andalas, Padang, West Sumatra, Indonesia. This is an annual conference hosted by LP3M Universitas Andalas, the third year in succession from the first ICED-QA was hosted in 2018, but the first to be hosted virtually due to pandemic situation. This third ICED-QA is brought with the theme Quality Assurance on Merdeka Belajar, giving students more control over their learning experience, which is the embodiment of policy reformation from the Education and Culture Ministry of Indonesia called Merdeka Belajar, or Freedom to Learn. There are 6 sub-themes will be focused on this international conference, which are curriculum design of higher education, development and application of learning method, development and application of learning assessment, information technology applied in teaching process, quality assurance for higher education, and team teaching models and method in teaching process. We will hold 6 plenary lectures from 6 keynote speakers across 5 countries in these 2 days from 27 until 28 October 2020. Professor Dr. Insinyur Marsudi Kisworo from Indonesia, Professor Rozinah Jamaluddin from Malaysia, Associate Professor Chris Robert from Australia, Dr. Abdul Khalik Al-Kahtani from Saudi Arabia, Dr. Kirotika Ragupati from Singapore, and Professor Dr. Heni Lucida from Indonesia. There will be 104 abstracts will be presented in 4 sessions of parallel session in this conference. And more than 300 participants have been registered in this conference. I very much hope all the participants will find this conference both stimulating and rewarding. Please enjoy this virtual conference. Thank you for your attention. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Ladies and gentlemen, next, we would like to invite the Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, Universitas Andalas, to give the opening speech as well as opening our event officially. Please welcome Professor Dr. Mansyurdin MS.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Praise be to Allah, the Almighty God. The Honorable keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Insinyur Marsudi Kisworo, Professor Rozinah Jamaluddin, Assistant Professor Chris Robert, Dr. Abdul Khalik Al-Kahtani, Dr. Kirotika Ragupati, Profesor Dr. Apotheker Heni Lucida. The Honorable Chair of Academic Senate, Chair of Council of Professors, Vice Rectors, Deans, and Head of Institute of Universitas Andalas. The Honorable Head of LLDikti, Wilayah 10, Sumbar, Riau, Jambi, dan Kepulauan Professor Dr. Heri, the Honorable Lecturer from Prepared University in West Sumatra, the Honorable Members of Forum Penjaminan Mutu BKS PTN Wilayah Barat, distinguished guests and participants of international conference at the DEARS Education Development and Quality Assurance Universitas Andalas. Ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to send the best regard from Director Universitas Andalas. He said sorry for not being with us this morning because there is another agenda at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, quality assurance is important for educational institution. By having the quality assurance, we can assure the system of education is standards. Currently, Universitas Andalas has been accredited A by National Higher Education Accreditation Board. Moreover, 3 program studies have been internationally accredited by Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technique. 7 study programs have been certified by ASEAN University Network Quality Assurance. The assessment challenge Universitas Andalas to support more study program to be regionally and internationally recognized. This recognition, of course, must be under our core business, that is education. The recent policy for our Ministry of Education and Culture about Merdeka Belajar Campus Merdeka and innovation in learning strategy has driven Universitas Andalas and other higher education institutions to be more creative to accommodate the programs. It is the challenge for us how to execute this program. Ladies and gentlemen, ICED-QA is annual activity of LP3M that become the media to publish the result of the educational and quality assurance research. In ICED-QA, keynote speaker from 5 countries and presenter from various universities in Indonesia are gathered virtually, sharing knowledge as well as experience. I'm sure that many innovative and creative ideas related to education and quality assurance might inspire us after joining this conference. To keynote speaker, thank you for the times and the enlightenment. I do believe that the presentation about outcome-based education from various perspectives might enrich our understanding for continuous quality improvement. To the presenter and all participants, thank you for your join at ICED-QA. We hope this corona pandemic will disappear soon and we might have offline conference in the future. Have enjoyable online conference. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Mansyurdin MS. Ladies and gentlemen, let's watch together profile video of Universitas Andalas. Please enjoy the video.
Andalas University is located in Padang City, which is the capital city of West Sumatra, endowed with a beautiful geographical area and religious community. Students are involved in character building, reflected in a variety of relevant activities, engaging faculty members and communities. The university's unique academic structure also promotes interdisciplinary collaboration and allows the faculties to teach across related disciplines. To support equal access to higher education, Andalas University provides various scholarship schemes. During their studies, students are involved in character building, reflected in a variety of relevant activities, engaging faculty members and communities. Summed up in the acronym SEJATI, which means patient, empathetic, honest, fair, responsible, and sincere. Interdisciplinary knowledge, in consultation with key industry experts, enables the faculties to develop programs that will better prepare students for working in industry. It has resulted in close industry links being built through strategic alliances with trade associations and key industry partners. Here the student is not only the dreamer, but also the doer who is proud of making things happen. Andalas University is committed to realizing its vision of becoming a leader in innovative university education by integrating learning, industry, and community. University always encourages lecturers to create innovations based on science and technology, which are then delivered to the community through research institutions and community service. Andalas University applies continuous quality improvement, improving internal quality through conducting internal quality audits, and designing a curriculum that meets the needs of stakeholders, that is, the world of work and industry. In an effort to produce graduates who are highly competitive, Andalas University also prioritizes entrepreneurship education for students. In an effort to be an international campus, Andalas University is preparing to become a state university. Various efforts to this end continue to be conducted. Students are given the opportunity to realize the issues faced by their communities. We encourage our students to help and serve others by offering them opportunities to go out and match their skills and abilities to the needs out there. We are proud to have created the university that we have today. All of these things increasingly encourage Andalas University to continuously develop itself to provide high-quality education for the glory of the nation.
The Honorable ladies and gentlemen, before moving on to our next agenda, let's take a picture together. I would like to invite everyone to turn on the video cam. Okay, everyone, please hold on a minute. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Once again, 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's done. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we will continue to the next agenda. Plenary session will be led by our moderator. Please welcome Ms. Diah Cahaya Iman, MLead PhD.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Lima. First of all, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to introduce you. My name is Dia Jaya Iman, and I'm your moderator for the first session of the third International Conference Educational and Quality Assurance 2020. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you here, the virtual conference of Andalas University. This morning, we have the honor of hearing three great speakers: Professor Masudi Wahyu Kisworo, Engineering, PhD, IPU, Associate Professor Chris Roberts, and Kirutika Raghupati, PhD. They are all really amazing experts in their field. And we are all here very excited to hear their presentation. We have very limited time, so the speaker will present their presentation for 20 minutes, and after that, we will have a question and answer session. You can send your questions in the chat, and the host or the co-host will share it in the PPT, and then I will read it for the presenters. These presentations are very significant. The pandemic of COVID-19 has been affecting different people in different ways, especially learning and teaching worldwide. The current health crisis has forced people to overcome numerous challenges. Over 60 million students in Indonesia are temporarily out of school due to COVID-19. Yet, COVID-19 still poses a significant challenge to educational development, especially related to the quality assurance. And today we are going to hear the first presenter, Professor Marsudi Wahyu Kisworo, PhD, IPU. He is the first IT professor in Indonesia and the KPU IT architect. He who currently serves as independent commissioner of PT Telkom Indonesia and is very well known in the IT world's national arena. He was an expert witness in 2019 about the election dispute at the Constitutional Court. In the world of education, he has served many prestigious positions, such as Director of Perbanas Institute, and is currently Chairman of the Vocational Education Associate throughout Indonesia. Our great speaker this morning, Professor Marsudi Wahyu Kisworo, graduated from Bandung Institute of Technology in the field of computer and control engineering, and continued his postgraduate diploma study at Curtin University of Technology, Perth, Australia, on the computer science, and he obtained his doctoral degree also from Curtin University of Technology in Perth, and finished it in 3 years. And his high index is pretty high, 6 and then more than 200 citations. Professor Masudi was also awarded as the best rector in Asia by World Education Congress Singapore in 2018. It was a fantastic achievement. And he is the author of Revolusi Mengajar, or Teaching Revolution. And the title of Professor Masudi's presentation this morning is Higher Education in Hyper-Connected World During and After the COVID-19 Pandemic. Professor Masudi, you have 20 minutes, and I will give you a sign 3 minutes before your time is over. Professor Masudi, you may start now your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Dia. First, it's a great honor for me to speak in this honorable forum where we will discuss quality of education, especially when we face the pandemic and by having also the disruption of technology. So we have been, in Indonesia especially, we have been discussing whether delivering subject or delivering courses or delivering class using technology is lowering the quality compared to face-to-face session. I myself, I say that's not true, because many online courses has proven that the quality is also not as even better than face-to-face teaching. For instance, the courses offered by Udemy, Coursera, and other things. But in Indonesia may be true because in the last, in the previous before COVID, even Indonesian government is not allow education is delivered using technology. Only the Open University is allowed to have distance education, but other university is not allowed. So this is a big problem for us. So that's why when the pandemic comes, then we are like having a shock when we face the new reality where we cannot deliver face-to-face education anymore. So let me share my view on how we can still deliver classes or deliver education, even we are not delivering using face-to-face mechanism. So let me start sharing. Okay, so let me start that. What happened with the world before COVID? There is a great advances in, especially in digital technology and in computer science and digital technology. There are big disruption. And what we see right now is the effect of the disruption. For instance, disruption in mobile internet. There are actually 12 big disruption, but I will not discuss one by one because of time limitation. For instance, in mobile internet, soon in Indonesia, we will have 5G network. The 5G network is more than 100 times faster than the current 4G network that we have. So with the speed of 1 gigabyte to maybe some experiments already can achieve 4 gigabytes, which is 100 times faster than current 4G. And also with larger bandwidth, even with lower battery consumption, and also reduce latency. That will change a lot of things, not only the business, but also how we can deliver education online. So it's more realistic, more real, like real life. The other thing is the expansion of the network. So we are currently live in hyper-connected network. Previously, only human being connected to human being. So internet is connecting human to human. But now, internet is also connecting things to things that we know the name as Internet of Things. The Internet of Things, the spread of the network, it is predicted that within 5 years, the number of connected devices will be 5 times more than human population. So if currently human population is about 6 billion, in the next 5 years, the number of connected devices will be around 30 billion devices connected. So we will live in what we call hyper-connected world. Everything is connected. Our devices is connected, our cars is connected, our classroom is connected, our whiteboard is connected, our lab equipment is also connected. Not only in our school, but also in the factory, we see connected robots that can replace human labor working, assembling, let's say in this video, assembling cars. And also not only assembling cars. In China, Foxconn, which is the biggest laptop manufacturer in China, they plan to replace their labor with robots. They plan within the next 3 years, they will implement 1 million robots to replace their 1 million employee. So we will see in the next 3 years, our laptop that is currently being partly by human being, in the next 3 years, it is 100% will be made by robots. This create the advances creates what we call digital world war. The digital world war exists in all aspect of human life, ranging from finance and banking. We see the fintech already revolutionized banking services. In commerce, for instance, online shopping already malls and like and also in city and mobility, in the next future, we will see autonomous car that doesn't need. And also in education, we'll see in the future, smart campuses will become our normal campus. So I will focus in that area. While we are facing with this digital world, then come the deadly Thanos. I think most of you have seen Thanos. Thanos in the Avengers Endgame. The Thanos is this Thanos is called COVID-19. It wipes all worldwide economy. It brings problem to nation and also affect almost every aspect of human life, including in our field, education. So what will happen after this COVID-19? We will face the mega shift. The mega shift, I call it behavior mega shift, which is the new normal in the future, even after we live, after the COVID-19 keys. The first mega shift is at-home lifestyle. It means everyone who already enjoy working at home, who already enjoy studying at home, playing at home, then this lifestyle will continue. We know that actually we can study at home. We know that actually most of our work can be done at home without needing to go to the office. The second mega shift is go virtual. Everything will be virtual. We will have virtual money, we will have a virtual shop, we will have virtual banks, and also virtual schools, virtual classrooms, virtual universities. These two mega shift is the thing that is related to our discussion today. The other two, we're going to bottom of the pyramid, and empathetic society is not too relevant, so I will skip because of time limitation. So, what is the solution of that situation? This is my thought. This is what I think. Our campus must move or must transform ourselves into smart campus. What is a smart campus? Smart campus is a place where devices and application will create a new experience and facilitate advanced learning experience. So a smart campus will facilitate digital learning, will support what I call TEMUS learning. TEMUS stands for T first traditional, means face-to-face. E stands for e-learning, which is assisted by technology. M stands for mobile. Mobile learning means the students can study anytime, anywhere. U means ubiquitous learning. Learning can be done by everywhere, everyone, every time. And S stands for smart learning. So a smart campus is a campus that supports all of these 5 learning modes, not only traditional face-to-face learning, but also e-learning, mobile learning, ubiquitous learning, as well as smart learning. The second characteristic of smart campus is they use digital technology to enhance campus life and to enhance students' experience. They use integrated digital technology to manage campus resources, campus activities, staff, students, and other stakeholders. And this integrated technology will make our campus tidy, safe, and comfortable. So in the future, I think there will be, if currently we see that malls that is constructed by brick and mortar already taken over by digital malls, maybe in the future, in the next 5 or 10 years, we will see that our campus will not be consist of brick and mortar campus anymore, but there will be a server and a server room with a very high bandwidth. That's a campus of the future. So the smart campus is the main theme of the how campus digitalization in the future will be applied. In smart campus, the smart campus transform from currently teacher-centered learning to student-centered learning, because smart campus facilitate anytime, anywhere learning. So anytime and anywhere feedback can be given for students by their partners or from their supervisors, and all artifact that is created by students along their learning will be archived in a shared multimedia record. So students will learn from past experience of himself or other students. And the third is all the knowledge will be on the fingertip, because the digital campus will store almost everything, the word knowledge, including the tacit knowledge, which is in the form of blogs, in the form of video, in the form of pictures, in a digital repository that can be accessed by students. So not only explicit knowledge, but also tacit knowledge can be stored in this multimedia repository. And the fourth characteristic of the smart campus is all the best academics, all the best teachers, all the best researchers will be connected. So we can easily learn from the best teachers in statistics, for instance, in open educational resources. Or we can see from YouTube, for instance. In YouTube, you can find so many lectures given by the best lecturers, the best professors in the world. And all of it are accessible easily using digital technology. So this is the transformation that will happen in a smart campus. So the next question, how we move or how we evolve our campus to a smart campus. So I classify campus into 5 categories. The first is the campus 1.0, which is a campus pre-digital campus. Maybe in the West or in modern country or in the West country, it doesn't happen. But in Indonesia, we still have pre-digital campus, a campus that doesn't use technology at all. The second generation is campus 2.0. They already use technology, but still partial. The third generation is campus 3.0, which is using already integrated technology. And the fourth campus is campus 4.0, which is they use intelligent technology. And the smart campus is campus 5.0, which is the human and machine live together in a society. So this is the characteristic of smart campus. In smart campus, they use simple technology. They use still whiteboard, paper, books, chalks, and other things. And they teach or deliver the subject still in the classroom style, using teacher and still teacher-centered learning. So the teacher is the center of the stage. The teacher is the captain of the classroom. In campus 2.0, they already use IT, for instance, using laptop to teach, using PowerPoint, using using LCD projectors. Maybe some of them using LMS, but LMS is still used to support learning, not for learning itself, but only to support learning. For instance, to store or to keep additional material, or for to store the slides. They already use e-learning, but still disintegrated. In campus 3.0, they use already integrated campus network, but still face-to-face teaching and assisted by also learning management system. In this third type of campus, teaching already implemented blended learning. So part of them teach face-to-face, and the other part is using technology. And also already support mobile learning in this campus 3.0, and already also implement open educational resources. In Campus 4.0, they already use intelligent devices like IoT. So we will see in the next slide how IoT will be implemented. And all decision is data driven, also including the decision that is made by students to create their own curriculum is also data driven. This Campus 4.0 support ubiquitous learning. And the Smart Campus 5.0, they already use artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other intelligence mechanism to support learning. So this is called, they already use open integrated resources to create smart learning. From this environment point of view, Campus 1.0 usually still space and time bound. So because it is face-to-face, so when you are not there and the teacher is not there, they cannot interact. So because it is bounded by space and time. The material they use already usually simple. They use textbook only. In Campus 2.0, still space and time bound, but the material is already richer because they usually put supporting material like video, pictures, additional journals in their learning management system. But still it is integrated. In Campus 3.0, students, because it support mobile learning, students can learn anywhere. So it is not space bound anymore, but still time bound. Material is already richer and also integrated. In Campus 4.0, students can learn anywhere, anytime. And they learn from real problem because they use all the digital resources that is available on the internet. So the real problem is suitable or faced according to the context. In Campus 5.0, students can have what we call smart learning. It means personalized. The students can make their own curriculum. They can study at their own pace. So let me show, okay, this one.
Professor Masudi, you got 2 minutes more. Sorry for interrupting.
That's more. So students, we can design their own curriculum. So there is no recipe like curriculum that we give to students, but students can make their own recipe for their own life. They can mix and match subjects from different departments to make it suitable for their future. So they have their own preference in learning, because we know some students prefer, they are visually learners. Some of them are auditory learners. Some of them are kinesthetic learners. In this smart campus, all of this learning preference will be supported. So this is for staff. Staff in Campus 1.0, the teacher is the king of the classroom because the ruler of the classroom. But in the next generation of campus, in Campus 3.0, 4.0, a lecturer become not as the king of the classroom anymore, not the ruler of the classroom, but become the facilitator. He guides the students to find knowledge. In the campus for smart campus, Campus 5.0, the lecturer will become the friend of the students because he will become their duty is to stimulate interest, to attract students to learn, and to discuss with other peers. And how it is implemented in our Tridharma. So this is because of time. In teacher learning, Smart Campus will be a campus that is connected to other campus and seamlessly connected to all learning sources using AI. For research, it supports multidisciplinary research, network and collaborative research. In community service, it create one-stop service that is purpose.
Sorry, Professor Masudi, we got to stop now.
So I think
maybe can you wrap up?
This is some picture of a smart campus that I built. I myself, I'm consulting to build several smart campus in This is one in Jakarta. This is also one in Jakarta and one in Yogyakarta. This is a smart virtual classroom. And this is a classroom that use surrogate, that use avatar to study. So the lecturer and the students is not physical lecturer and physical students, but they are avatars. They study using this technology. This is the information because of time. Thank you, Ibu Dia. I'm sorry if I took.
That's all right. Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Marsudi. That's really very informative and very interesting presentation. I believe our audience will have some questions related to your topic. And our next speaker is Mr. Chris Robert. He is the Associate Professor in Medical Education at the University of Sydney. This is my alma mater, so I'm really happy to see someone from Sydney University. And he's based at the Northern Clinical School and the Office of Education at Sydney Medical School. Previously in Sydney, he has worked as Associate Director in the Charles Perkins Center and head of the Office of Medical Education and the Office of Postgraduate Medical Education. Professor Robert has maintained a group of PhD students both as a principal and associate supervisor in areas related to the professionalism, interdisciplinary research, and assessment. 4 of his PhD students are undertaking doctorates in aspect of assessment, and he is experienced in both quantitative and qualitative research. Professor Robert is a past chair of Medical and Dental Admission Committee, and he undertakes consultancy in medical education, particularly around selection focused on assessment. He is well regarded in the Australian and international medical and health science education community and has championed the importance of robust assessment of learning and the importance of multidisciplinary working. He has published more than 50 research papers. That's really amazing. And since 2009, Professor Robert has high index is 17 with more than 800 citations. Professor Chris Roberts' presentation today is entitled Community, Engaged Learning and Teaching in Learner-Driven Education. Professor Robert, the floor is yours.
Well, many thanks for that warm introduction. Can I just say how pleased I am to be invited to speak with you. I so wish I was over there in Padang, but I'm here in Australia, but I feel very much with you. The situation in Australia with COVID is very, very different. I think we've had 5 cases this week, all of which have been traced. And we hope that will continue for a long time. So what I'd like to talk about, just slightly change the title. I'm really wanting to focus on the relationship between student agency and community engaged education. And although I'm giving examples from healthcare, I hope that a lot of the principles are quite generic and apply to you in your setting. So what I want to talk about today is about some of the influences on student engagement in community-based education, thinking about some of the differences between the traditional approaches to education, in my case in hospitals versus the community, what educational strategies seem to be working in community, and just thinking about some of the educational design principles if you wish to implement some of these activities in your setting. So at the outset, I realised that the primary and community care situation in Indonesia is very different from what it is in Australia, but I think we all aspire to the same sort of principles of good medical care available to all, and it's certainly been my privilege to work with members of Andalas University in this area, but also to note there is a good range of collaborations between Indonesia and Australia in this space. I like to sort of hold a theory about student engagement, which helps us infuse some of our projects where and when it's important to promote agency. And I quite like this quite simple model of separating out structure from agency. So by structure, I mean the sort of the social and cultural rules that we behave by, the institutional rules of the medical school or the law school or the engineering school, the rules around the actual degree program, and the rules within the tasks within those programs. So for examples, rules can be have unintended consequences. Structure can drive us away from learning. So for example, if students are asked to do a multiple choice question on scientific principles, then they will spend their time learning in the library or online in the smart campus. They won't be out in the community seeing patients and learning the art of clinical medicine. And so agency, if you like, captures the freedom, and we wish our students to be self-directed learners, self-reflected, and enabled. But of course, if there isn't enough structure there, students won't know what to do. Their learning will be constrained. And so that suggests different courses of action. So there are a number of pieces of literature about guiding us, how we can embed student engagement in our teaching and learning programs. And the principles are really, I think, quite generic to any sort of setting. So it's important to have a top-down and a bottom-up approach, so to create an institutional culture and a formal framework whereby students are included in decision-making, and that means there has to be good communication routes at multiple levels between students and faculties. This paper provides a number of tips how you can promote active student engagement in a variety of different activities. Having them be part of committees is really important. Getting them involved in peer teaching, peer support are just some of the ways in which we can promote student engagement. The next point I want to make is that when we're designing community-based activities, it's really important what the overarching philosophy of the institution is, because if there's a real mismatch, it can be really hard to embed community-engaged activities and really hard to get students engaged with those activities. So just a little example from our own setting, we've just designed a new 4-year graduate entry medical program, which we call the MD 2020. And quite simply, this diagram is just showing how we align the learning outcomes with the instructional methods and with the assessments. The learning outcomes are pretty fixed, set by the accreditation body, although we might have some local flavour imposed by the university, who are keen that our students are culturally competent, digitally fluent, reflective leaders, and so on and so forth. But we've made quite a change in our programme of assessments. We've moved away from that kind of barrier, big test everyone together, towards a more portfolio-based assessment. And we've used our resources to really invest in making sure that much of our teaching is flipped, online videos and small group teaching modalities. And we've done this because we believe that that improves the clinical reasoning and diagnostic skills, the professionalism, and makes our graduates much better prepared for internship work and future specialty training. So I wanted to tell you about two specific programs. The first one is the SLICE, an acronym for Situated Learning in Community Environments. And this is about quite an innovation for us in a traditional university like Sydney, about introducing early clinical experience in the medical program. And the other one I wanted to talk about was longitudinal integrated clerkships or placements, LICs. So as I said, this is quite an innovation for us, because normally our junior students, first and second years, have largely been taught on campus or in hospitals in ward-based teaching. So to move out to the community and use general practitioners and other communities, nurses, pharmacists, dentists, that type of thing is really new for us. So I'll just give you a little flavour of the approach we took and how some of the implementation issues have to be thought about if you want to do this kind of thing in your programs. So that's just a bit of a diary of the week for the students. And so basically the message is that for out of the 5 days, 3 days they're in the hospitals on the wards. These are junior students. Most of their lecture material is delivered through online videos. But they have 1 day a week where they're entirely in the community. The other day is what we call a flexible learning day, where they catch up. Just looking at the learning outcomes, assessments, learning methods alignments. Again, we just took the learning outcomes that we already had, but mapped them to general practice and community. So the general practice professional college framework. Our assessments are mainly sort of work-based, so we want the students to be observed doing things using modern work-based assessment modalities. But we worked out some tasks that students could do by having a look at public health data and what GPs were actually seeing, so that we could make sure that all our students had something to do in the clinic rather than just passive observation. That's a rather busy slide, and really the message I wanted to get over was on one page. The student, in effect, had a list of the things that they could be doing in a GP, a general practitioner, or a community health clinic, or within private practices of allied health, or within pharmacists. But there's still plenty for us to do in terms of feeding back on the task, feedback from students, from practitioners. A real effort and a small team that were dedicated to actually recruiting enough practices so that we could place all our students. But we've been very pleased at how responsive, even though there's not necessarily any money for them, how they've rallied round to take our students. And of course, there's the whole sort of faculty development cultural change to get our community supervisors, preceptors trained up in what we need them to deliver. Technology, we've heard about a lot of what technology can do, but we're still looking around chasing pieces of paper and improving on that. And of course, thinking about an evaluation strategy. The kinds of things that we think that we'll find long term is, for the program itself, will improve our graduate outcomes. We think we'll produce better doctors. We'll have built a diverse community-based network of educators over the years, and we'll have fostered good working relationships with a range of healthcare providers from different disciplines. As I say, we think we'll have an impact on healthcare practice because of the constant diffusion of good practice between the university and the healthcare providers in the community. And our students will have a much richer experience. The longitudinal integrated placement is more about more senior students, and the particular example is where a group of students work out totally rurally. And the reason that's important, and I guess it is in Indonesia as well, that a third of Australians actually live in the country in rural areas, but they only have half the number of doctors, but they have a much more amplified, greater range of social determinants of health. And that we've found through various studies that training in a rural centre is a good predictor of future settling in the area. So this particular, I'm just going to share a little bit of data about a particular longitudinal integrated placement in a former mining town in New South Wales in the outback. And what we found is if students go rurally and on their own, then they feel socially isolated, physically isolated, worried, access issues. But if they're actually there in a group and there's actively engaged with the local community, living there, even doing bits of work there, as well as learning, then you get that camaraderie, that engagement, and that sort of resilience. Within these rural communities, there are different communities of practice: the general practitioners, the base hospital, the community clinics, the allied health private practices, and in Australia, the iconic flying doctor, which is a kind of air ambulance. So what the students need to recognise is that yes, there is a formal didactic timetable-based curriculum, but this is not as rich as in urban areas, and most of the learning they have to do is actually requires their own agency, seizing the opportunities, soaking up the learning like a sponge, constantly looking for ways to improve themselves. But at the heart of this is this idea that there's a sort of a sense of connectivity. So this student agency is quite sort of a complex thing. They need to sort of cross boundaries between the different communities of practice, be comfortable in practice, be comfortable in the hospital, be comfortable in the clinics, and recognise the patient journey across them. And by doing this, they get a much richer sense of professional identity, of what it means to be a doctor, what it means to be a rural doctor. And we believe through our evaluation data that this makes them much more prepared and confident for practice. So our overall model for sort of producing these longitudinal clinical placements is developing a university community partnership, making the most of the particular geography of place, the particular context, and enriching that context by putting in resources and networking with the various providers. At the heart of it is promoting, preparing, orientating the students to have this connectivity, this agency, this engagement, so that they can make the most of and create new informal learning opportunities. And as I say, getting the students to reflect on their growing sense of professional identity and how they identify areas of weakness and seek out new informal learning opportunities to counter those areas of weakness, so that as they go through the programme, they become more and more prepared for practice.
Professor Robert, you got 3 minutes more.
Okay, thank you very much. Having sort of set out a couple of these community engaged sort of projects, the other thing is once you've got those basics in place, then you can start to do more complex things. And interprofessional learning is really important, particularly in the community, but in hospitals as well. Students work in teams, healthcare practitioners work in teams, so it's actually good to promote interprofessional learning. Previously, it used to be really hard to get people together, but now in the age of Zoom, it's very easy for a group of interprofessional students to run a case conference.
Hi everyone, my name's Amy. I'm the doctor managing Mrs. Anne Lamb's case. In summary, Mrs. Lamb is a 65-year-old woman who is transferring to a rehabilitation hospital following a suspected left MCA stroke with significant motor deficits. She has a past history of colorectal cancer.
And so what happens in that meeting is that they actually work out together by talking to each other to create a management plan for that patient. And what we find is that's a much richer plan because it's interdisciplinary than if it had just been done by one of the students alone. As we've said, because it is a big change, it is a big cultural change for us, then it's really important for faculty development. And again, I think we've found that with the age of Zoom, where it was really difficult to get people together, people are now very used to coming together, and a lot of our online, a lot of our training programs have now gone online. This is just a little snapshot of a recent clinical teacher training program that we ran to upskill a variety of healthcare professionals, and we make these into professional as well. So if I might summarise, then if we're thinking about promoting student agency and engagement, and particularly in community education, we need a sort of an overarching, longitudinal, long-standing academic community partnership. We need to invest in building trust in communities of practice that we're asking to host our students. Fundamental is the student being an active, agentic learner, seeking out the informal learning opportunities, self-directed, self-motivated, self-reflected. But we need to, yes, we need structure of curriculum, rules, regulations, but they need to be flexible so that they don't constrain student agency.
You got time is over, Professor Roberts. I'm
it's
sorry.
No, it's fine. I've got one more statement.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's the very last statement on the slide. That we believe that we need longitudinal data to show how this prepares students for practice and develops that rich sense of professional identity. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Chris Robert. That's really a very interesting presentation. Yeah, we will have the question and answer session soon, but before we have that, I would like to invite Ms. Kirutika Ragupati. She's the Associate Director, and she has been with the Center for the Development, Teaching and Learning since 1997, National University of Singapore. Ms. Ragupati co-leads professional development programs and oversees the centralized teaching quality instrument at NUS, student feedback and peer review. Her research work focuses on assessment, student living learning experiences, academic development, and technology-enhanced learning. She's also a facilitator of open network learning, a course or community and an approach. Some position of Ms. Ragupati panel member, Learning Innovation Fund, Technology or LIFT, yeah. And this is a review panel from the NUS. And she also was the organizing committee member for National Technology and the World Learning Conference from the Minister of Education, Singapore, and co-chairperson for the International Symposium on Technology Enhanced Learning, also from the National University of Singapore. She has got 8 key publications and 4 ongoing research projects. This is really fantastic. And the title of Kirutika Ragupati is The Promise and Pitfall of Gradeless Learning in Learner-Driven Education. Ms. Kirutika Ragupati, time is yours. We cannot hear you. I think you need to unmute your, okay.
Thank you so much for that very kind introduction and also for inviting me to this international conference. I'm really glad to see quite a number of participants joining us today. First of all, I'm really excited to be here, to be able to share with you the story of how we implemented the gradeless learning at the National University of Singapore. Let me also take this opportunity to thank Dedison Gasni for inviting me to this session. So let me begin the talk by talking about, in our field of higher education, one of the things that we hear a lot is going beyond the grades, right? But rarely we see examples of a whole university approach that takes to gradelessness. So what I am going to be doing today is really sharing with you this alternate approach to grading that our university, the National University of Singapore, has taken, right? So when we talk about teaching and learning, we are aware that assessment actually tends to so much to drive and control teaching and learning. So when you think about it from the teacher's perspective, much of what we do in the classroom is really determined by the assessment structures we work under, right? But when you think about it from the student's perspective, the relationship between assessment and learning in higher education often tends to come down to one single thing, that's the grade, right? So when we think about why do we grade, for over a century in all levels of education, be it primary, secondary, or higher education, one of the things that we have been using it is to sort and track students. The second is we want to reward outstanding achievement that students achieve through taking part in those courses, in their modules, and so on. And then the third is we want to enable the communication between institutions. A student done their undergraduate, or even between primary school to secondary, and so the grades are the one which determines or which able to communicate what these students are capable of before coming into different institution. And they also indicate a promise for potential employers. And even in today's age, we do see that employers do look at, as a first cut at least, look at the grades before they invite someone to actually for an interview itself. But then when we think about why not to grade, there are a number of scholars and educators who critique the act of grading or the use of grades, have blamed it very much on the increased student stress, right? It's not just increased student stress, but also the unhealthy competition that it pits students against. And you also tend to see a lot of grade inflation happening with grades, and that's one of the big reasons to stop this kind of competition, but go in towards where students more collaborate or cooperate is what we want, and that's why one reason is why we should not be grading. Another reason is the grades are not as reliable. It's not reliable, and they're not. They are inexact tools to be used to gauge the learning in our students, or even the learning process in the students, right? And then more importantly, their grades actually undermine learning. The students are not motivated to learn solely by grades. We should encourage students to be learning more towards lifelong learning, towards deep learning, and so on. So the grades itself is actually creating the stumbling block for our students to build that core competencies, to build that our university graduates, as graduates, they would need when they actually complete their education. Right? So these are the key reasons why we think that students, we should not be grading, or particularly thinking about it in letter grades or number grades, and so on. So to overcome this obsession with grades, the alternative to us became clear, and one of the alternatives was, or the clear alternative was gradeless learning. So gradeless learning, if you think about it, it's actually everywhere, right? Particularly outside of the formal education system. Think about, for example, learning to bake cookies, right? Or even learning to ride a bicycle. These are examples where you don't think about the grades, right? You just go ahead with the flow. You want to learn it, and when you succeed, you don't need a grade, but the skills and knowledge that you have acquired during the process of learning is really a sufficient reward for yourself, right? So when we don't succeed again, the failing grade does not add to our stress. We try again. We know that the mistakes we have made, and we start to try again. So that's there is, in fact, the lack of repercussions is what is making us to try again, to risk, to learn again, to overcome the failures and come back to it. So advocates of gradeless learning have been suggesting that eliminating grades alone will lead to positive outcomes and motivate our students to improve both their learning as well as their well-being. So what do I mean by gradeless learning? So when I think about the word gradeless, what does it tell me? For me, it is basically a conceptual shorthand for what many of us, be it educators, administrators, policymakers, students, and even parents commonly think about is the ideal form of learning. A learning that's completely delinked from letter and number grades. And that's what I'm referring to it as gradeless in this talk. So why do we need to go for gradeless is really removing the pressure of grades from our students is one way of easing students firstly into the university or for that matter into any institution that they are going into. It is simply placing all the opportunities in the hands of our learners rather than it's residing with the teachers, right? It's likely to make our students into critical, reflexive, independent, and also moving towards democratically minded thinkers. So that's one of the things that we wanted to see, and I want to see, and I'm sure this implementation of gradeless learning is one way of achieving these. Right? So it's got 3 key benefits, and the first, as you see on my screen, the first key benefit is the sense of solidarity and mutual responsibility between students instead of competition. It also, in some way, flattens the hierarchy as well. When you go towards having, continuous collaborations and responsibility. The second key thing is there is this dialogical engagement, both with the peers as well as with the teacher, between the student and the teachers, and between student and students. And there is a critical questioning of authority. That's where I'm saying, it flattens the hierarchy a little more instead of simply having a hierarchy where you accept simply because the sage on the stage is saying, or, so there is no blind acceptance. The third most important is the development of intrinsic motivation among our students. Again, as I said, to make them self-directed, independent, critically engaged, instead of skilled memorizers of information. And that's really not we want our students to be, going with skilled memorizers going into the workforce. But we want them to be critically engaged, be independent, and self-directed learners. Okay, so what did we? So how did this happen? It started with the national effort itself to reform. Thinking about Asian educational culture, it's still even to this day and age equates learning with grades. So even in Singapore, that country that's highly regarded as global leader in education, the emphasis on grades still exists. So one thing that the Ministry of Education did was put up a call for the schools and universities to go beyond learning for grades, but to go towards learning for mastery. So that's so taking that. So that was long time ago in 2014, and taking that as a cue, the National University of Singapore introduced gradeless learning in 2014. So this was in response to the ministry's call for de-emphasizing grades. And it was given to only the first year students, to all our first year, about 7,000 plus students, was to take these 5 courses as gradeless. Okay. So the system, when you think about gradeless learning system, it's got multiple variations. There's exists across the world. So what did we do? The university, so the variations generally are between either, it is completely mandatory or optional, or you have a university-wide, so all courses go through this gradeless, or it is can be, so if you offer a course, then all students in that course go through a gradeless environment. But there are also options where you have student-specific, and that's something that our university took. So which means the student actually has the freedom to decide as to whether he wants to take the grade or not the grade. So that's student specific. And then you can have predetermined pass-fail. So before, when you start taking the course, it's predetermined that this course is going to be a traditional pass-fail kind of thing, or you can go in for a retroactive pass-fail. So the university, what we did was NUS employs a student-specific retroactive gradeless approach, right? So what does that mean? So all first-year students still receive a grade at the end of this every completed module. But then the students then have the freedom to decide or accept the grade or to drop the grade. So that's how it's becoming student-specific. So anything above C gets a satisfactory, or below C gets an unsatisfactory. But with this type of thing, there is the impact on GPA is not, there is no impact on GPA. So it's the same for our gradeless system, or similar to a traditional pass-fail kind of system. So what did the leaders at the university envisage? At that time, the then president, Tan Toh Chuan, he was saying this gradeless education is a way for us to encourage our students to choose their courses based on their own learning needs and interests. So it could be, I'm interested in the grade, but I wouldn't take it just because, this might impact my GPA. So rather than optimizing on grades, they wanted our students to take based on their learning needs and interests, and then give them the opportunity to experiment, to explore, and discover their own passion through the courses that they take. The provost also talked about how it's going to lead to a transformative educational experience, because encouraging students to optimize their learning experience, but also to build a positive and a conducive learning culture, because they are moving away from competition, but moving towards collaboration, right? So what were our research questions that we asked were basically about, what were our student impressions, how did the policy impact the course choices, and what were the perceived benefits. So this is what I will discuss today with you. So how did we go about? We ran the first survey in 2014, and you see that. And then we then did a modified survey to run for the faculty. When we did the first survey, it was just when the gradeless system was introduced, and students had not even actually gone through this gradeless approach. But in 2015 and January and August, there was a batch of students who have gone through this gradeless approach. We also did some student focus groups in later. So what does, from our results, one thing that was very clear was that overall we found both students and faculty supporting gradeless learning. But you will see here, from here, that a student approval, or rather there was a strong approval from students compared to what faculty was actually approving it from. But then also students, we saw that from before there was a steady increase. So they were starting to actually think that this actually supports their learning more. So let me now go into this. Despite this clear approval gap between what the students thought and what the faculty felt, the perceived benefits, when we asked them one question about what was the best thing about this gradeless system, both had very common replies, right? The first one was improved student attitudes and behaviors towards learning. That is, including students were actually ready to take more academic risks. And the second, more important, was it reduced the stress and leading to a smoother university transition. Let me go in a little more into each of these things. So the first one is about, and before I go on, so incidentally, these two benefits was what you saw the president and the provost or the management actually envisaged as benefits that we wanted our students to achieve. So when you talk about students and faculty, both talked about improved attitudes and behaviors. There's a little busy slide here, but it's just look at the key highlighters that I have talked about. it's really about the positive impact on student attitudes and behaviors. The comments here show that students are motivated to learn for the sake of learning and not for the sake of grades, and it encourages them to move out of their comfort zone, be able to ready to make mistakes, accept failures and move on, and actually learn from their mistakes. And more importantly, it was also talking about the concept of learning for life and not just for the exams during that short period in time. If you look at the results on this slide, it talks about how our students were, again, able to take risks and explore subjects. So the environment became so conducive that students were able to move out of their comfort zone, explore new subjects. So when we talk about explore new subjects, these are subjects.
This is Ragupati, you got 3 minutes.
Yeah, sure. So one example is my own daughter is right now at the university. One of the things that she wanted to explore was to learn a new language in South Korea. And without fear, she could actually go into doing that. All right. So from the outset, that was academic risks was one. The less stress that I was talking about, removing the stress was effectively there all the time. But the other key thing that came about was about this smoother university transition. And this was very, very clear for two groups of students. One was the international students who were moving away from their homes, coming into the university. But taking Singapore's context, another group of students who benefited from this was our male students who were coming back from their national service after completing their mandatory national service, either in the military or the civil forces. So that we found that group of students were the group we interviewed as well as focus groups, and they talked about how their transition was better because they had a break or a gap year, a sort of 2 years before coming into the university. Of course, when we looked at the drawbacks, there was again the same thing. Even they talked about improved attitudes, they also talked about poor study habits. Because of the deep-rooted culture, it is quite easy to focus on grades, to emphasize on grades. But there were also some systemic issues that we will need to take a look at. So let me wrap up the presentation by just talking about what are some of the lessons that we have learned. Right? So according to our students and faculty, one clear benefit was that it disrupted the notion of learning for grades, so that they could focus on the content and the experience of learning, instead of worrying about earning a name. However, without motivators, some students could become complacent. So this alternative can actually, the concern of overemphasizing can lead to relieve that student stress and inspire students to approach learning differently. But more importantly, it enabled exploration and experimentation and instilling in our students lifelong learning. But despite our best intentions of the policymakers and us, what we saw that was it is quite difficult to actually alter learning attitudes and behaviors because of this temporary reprieve, that it only brings a temporary reprieve, the system that we have chosen. And the partial approach also sometimes leave our faculty frustrated and confused. So what then do we need to do? So in conclusion, it is really about creating a positive learning culture is a complex issue, and it undeniably takes more than a grading policy. So here is some some recommendations that I would like to offer before I end it requires gradual change. So one of the things is that we need to think about providing improved guidance to our students, right? So how do they relieve the kind of fundamental stress and competition felt by students? For this, our faculty can actually play an active role so as to maximize the effectiveness of gradeless learning, introducing, ungrading options, alternatives within your thinking about formative assessment, self-assessment, peer assessments, or even minimal grading. So these are things that they could introduce, but also improve the outreach and communication to also to employers, to the greater community, because sometimes it's the parents who have that.
Okay.
Right. So lastly, let me just end there. Yeah. Lastly, it's the faculty development that also helps instructors amend or develop courses to accommodate differently motivated learners. So with that, let me thank you all for listening, and I will be happy to take questions now.
All right, thank you very
so
much. Yeah, thank you so much, Ms. Kirupati Gupati. That's very interesting presentation. That how we to think about giving grades to the student or gradeless. And if I could conclude a little bit about what Professor Masudi has presented in the first presentation, that the situation in Indonesia, and then Professor Robert giving the example what he has done with the student at the University of Sydney, and then what has been implemented in NUS. I think we could see the connection there, how the education in the future should consider, especially for our case in Indonesia or in Andalas University, the technology, the 5.0 era, and then about the having the experience of the transition of the learning experience to encourage students to have the experience and choose, they have the freedom to choose what they are going to do. And so let's see what our audience can, reflect, whether we have some questions. Please write down your question and then your name or your institution. So our co-host will display it on the PowerPoint, and then I will also read it in case that cannot see it. Oh, okay. This is a note here. Professor Masudi has left the meeting, and because he has another agenda. And he has already answered the question. So there are two speakers now that are, he is still here to answer the questions. Okay, so let's see what kind of questions. So maybe the co-host can share the PowerPoint so we can see what kind of question do we have. Okay, I think Professor Chris Robert can see the question here. The first one, yeah, is addressed to Professor Chris Robert. Can you see that, Professor Robert?
It's just got the word "click to add title" over it. The question.
Oh, okay. A question for Prof. Chris Robert. Community-based learning seems similar to the Merdeka Belajar, the freedom to learn or study from our Minister.
Oh, it's in the chat from Henny Lucida.
Yeah.
Then that's a really good question. I suspect that if you have a traditional pharmacy curriculum with lots and lots of focus on the science, then there'll be a real overload of science. And I wonder how easy and how important the clinical placements are for pharmacists, both in hospital and in the sort of the community settings. What kind of network of community-based pharmacists do you have to support students going out there? I think the other key thing, as well as sort of changing the instructional methods a bit, the other key thing is what's your assessment system like? If your assessment system is on the sort of the fundamental, the basic sciences, lots of multiple choice questions, then you'll be driving students to know the content at the exclusion of being able to handle patients' queries, prescribe properly. So we think a kind of a more programmatic approach to assessment really focuses the learning outcomes on preparing them for practice rather than preparing them as sort of academics full of knowledge, if you can see the difference.
Okay, thank you, Professor Chris Roberts. And now we have another question here on the PowerPoint. This is, hi Chris, this is Anna Susanti from Ahmadiyya University. And this sounds great. What do you think about many kind of job will be going down, such as tellers and so on, because of the IR 4.0? And what should we do to help our students for the future?
So my university just up the road, Macquarie University, they've been doing a lot of this, looking at a sort of the digital future and the idea that I don't need to go to the doctor. I just bump iPhones and all my personal data, my sleep habits, my blood pressure, my heart rate, how many times I've been to the toilet will all be on this. And the idea is the doctor at the other end will have, sort of AI programs that will examine this and come to sort of conclusions. But I really don't think that's what medicine is about. I think that medicine is about still seeing people close up, touching them, examining them, answering their fears, giving them management problems. I think sure that certain things like diagnostics, particular types of surgery will be taken over by robots and AI. But I think the fundamental need for humans to be social, engage with the doctor, with a nurse, with a midwife, will remain, I think, for as long as we're still human. So I think the jobs that'll go, maybe some of the laboratory diagnosis, x-rays, looking down at microscopes at samples of tissue, I think those can be mechanized, and some forms of surgery. But I think the human desire for social contact at the time of illness.
Professor Roberts, can you hear us? I mean, can you hear me?
Yes, I can,
yeah. Okay, now we have another question here. My question is, this is from Hafid Fatul, Nutrition Department, Andalas University, saying how to improve motivation student, the motivation of the student to the blended learning, how to assess soft skill and hard skill of the students.
We had a lot of experience of this during the COVID shutdown, although it didn't tend to be serious. And I think initially we just engaged in emergency remote teaching, so just everything went online. But we quite recognised that people got zoomed out, they got exhausted, they got disconnected. So I don't think it's any single thing that you do. I think it's sort of multiple things, just sort of simply getting students to work in small groups, using sort of breakout rooms, facilitating. So we've actually, one of our main modalities, team-based learning, a form of problem-based learning, has gone entirely online. The students report working really well in that because it's structured, it's thought out, there's a sort of a theory behind it. The fact that they're doing a lot of the sort of the theory learning online means that when they are in the classrooms, they've done all the theory before and can work on practicing their sort of skills. But I think it's not going for sort of long lectures when people are exhausted. And I think a little bit of give and take, that it's impossible to stay in front of your computer for a long time, that you need different activities, different modalities. So I think, and interestingly, I think there are, so our education unit's just produced a little sort of video on how to motivate students. So there are a number of resources coming out that can give guidance to teachers.
Okay, thank you, Professor Roberts. Now, is there any other questions? Okay, here, this is from, which one? Ferdinand? Okay, this is like from Asniati Bahari. virtual class will be so perfect for Merdeka Belajar. However, for vocational classes need more practical than conceptual. How should we solve this constraint for vocational program? Thank you.
Well, I think I'd probably say probably pretty much the same thing. That I think the virtual class is great for getting scientific mechanisms, for getting the sort of the knowledge, for practicing the reasoning, whether it's engineering, whether it's legal reasoning, whether it's clinical reasoning. But then and I think for some courses, you can have quite complex online simulations and online practical, so simulated courts, simulated patient examinations and histories and things. But at some point, if the vocation is actually lay hands on people, then students need that practice, and we have to find ways to have COVID safe, socially distance, where they're actually coming together to practice really important vocational skills. Otherwise, I worry that we'll have a generation which is very theoretical, but not at all practically or emotionally or socially capable of delivering vocational service.
Okay, the next question is from Ferdinand regarding gradeless courses. This is for Mrs. Rajapati. Yeah, do they count for all required credits a student must take before or she or he graduates? How do they work for the whole curriculum in particular study program? Yeah, please.
Yes, definitely these gradeless courses does count for the final required grade, required credits for the degree that they have chosen, right? So any particular study program that they have chosen. So how do they work? So it's also because at NUS, it's a modular system. So students are free to take modules, but then they do have certain core modules and elective modules that it's pertaining to the study itself. So that those are what are requirements that they need to complete for that curriculum for that particular study. But they do have some, for example, it could be the general education modules and so on. So they do take these gradeless courses outside of those required core modules.
If I might make a point as well,
yeah, sure.
Thinking about programmatic assessments. So the idea is there's lots of, instead of having one big exam, there might be 10 pieces of work that they have to do through the program, but each piece isn't sort of marked as passed or fail. The pass or fail decision is made at the end of the year when a portfolio committee comes together and considers the whole body of work. And I think that is a nice compromise between not stressing them out about achieving high grades all the time,
That's right.
about the assessment driving the learning, but at the end of the year, it's an assessment of learning.
Yeah, interesting. Let's see whether we have.
I thought I saw another question.
Yeah, I saw that earlier. Please. This is for Mrs. Kiritika. This is from Anas Chanti. May I ask you that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Just like what Chris was talking about, so one of the things, so when can we use grade and non-grade? So definitely each of us will have either the institutional pressure or the disciplinary pressures, or sometimes even student pressures that we need to grade, right? So and again, so completely going towards fully gradeless at a start might also be a little difficult for each individual. So one thing that I would suggest is probably you have something called as gradeless zones. So for example, it could be only half of your assignments are graded and the other half are more formative, more examples. I will share some more examples of how those can be. So you could also think about either 1/2 or 1/3, that kind of thing, right? But again, you need to be considering about, so some of the major assignments, maybe one assignment is graded and one major assignment is not graded. So think of ways in which you can mitigate not moving completely into the gradeless or ungrading process. So when we say, so how can we then, how to show their ability in particular subjects? So there are many ways. I mean, grade is not the only way, right, to show that students have achieved their learning. So there are many other ways of looking at it. So one is process reflection. Again, thinking about getting students to write reflective essays of their process of how they've achieved itself. So that's one way of looking at it. You can think about self and peer assessment. Again, it's much more about peer feedback that they get, and they themselves actually. There is one example by Jesse Stommel, one of those very early adopters of ungrading, where he talks about he does not grade, but he asks, because the university actually requires that he provide a grade, he gets students to grade for themselves. After he has gone through all the formative feedback for each of their assignments that they have done, but then he does inform students that he can at any point, change the grade. But so far, in his experience over the last 20 years, he says very rarely has he done that. And even if he's done that, it's always moving the students up in their grade rather than bringing them down, because he realized that female students actually tend to grade themselves one grade lower than they would have actually, than what the teacher would have graded.
So really interesting, that Dunning-Kruger effect, and I guess the students who are incompetent grade themselves higher. Another approach, a slightly different approach that we've taken in the programmatic assessments, is we've invested resources in all the students having access to a learning advisor that they meet, and then they meet with their portfolio of all their works. And then the learning advisor helps the student reflect on, okay, where am I strong, but where am I weak and in areas of improvement? And the learning advisor encourages them to come up with a bit of a plan so that they can address those areas where they're weaker than they should be.
That was what I was going to next, was using portfolios. And then like you said, they can use portfolio or a learning journal throughout their module and then use that. But having an advisor, like what Chris was saying, would be one way of actually, having a lot more dialogic within peers as well, between the teacher and the students, but also between peers. So you can have mentors from early years. So one thing that our medical school does is, for every student, when they join in their first year, there is a mentor from the senior students. And this continues for the entire time they are in the university. And these are, again, opportunities for students to go back to think about and talk about their own learning itself. So there are many examples of how you can actually use. You can also have another thing called as contract grading. So what that means is, or sometimes people call it as rubrics. So students are provided with a way that they can actually achieve a certain performance. And if they have achieved that, then you go into this minimal grading that, again, Chris alluded to, was, you have either minimal grading. So it is either distinction, pass, fail, or it's strong, satisfactory, weak. But students with the contract grading or with the rubrics, it's very clear to them as to what level of learning have they achieved, where are they at, what is that they need to do to improve further. And in the rubrics, one thing that I really like is a single rubric. What that means is you only provide them with an achievement level where they have to achieve these categories. But students can then actually simply achieve beyond that, right? And they note it down in their rubrics to say that, okay, these are what I have actually achieved beyond what was required of me in this particular assignment.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Pati. Now let's see the next question. Hi, Chris. I'm Uma from UE. And what are the impact of learning in community of students' professional identity? Are there any differences when it is applied in preclinical or clinical stage? So, Professor Roberts?
I'm not sure I quite caught the question. Was the question about professional identity in different settings?
I think what is meant here, like whether being a doctor or being a, how do you say this, like professional identity, like maybe the image of being a professional. Maybe.
So I'll just speak in general, and I apologize
Yeah.
if I quite got it wrong. I think
Yeah.
there's a couple of things. One, professional identity. So when students begin, before they form their own professional identity as a doctor or as a nurse, we actually get them together and do sort of various lessons. So right from day one, they're getting used to the idea of having a professional identity as a discipline, you know, as a doctor, as a nurse, as a pharmacist, but also to have a sense of an interprofessional identity, the idea that you can work in teams. So we have a program that's longitudinal throughout all of the degree programs that really works on this interprofessional identity, so that they qualify with collaborative and team working skills and a competence in interprofessional practice. I think the other point which I was making in my talk is that often when students are sort of in a major teaching hospital and there's all the teaching grades, they're actually at the bottom of a very long feeding chain in terms of having educational opportunity. But when they're out in sort of rural areas or underserved areas, they're actually contributing, they're actually working, they're actually doing the job of being a doctor or a nurse. And we find that responsibility, that trust, that enablement really enhances their sense of professional identity, their self-efficacy, their self-belief that they can do this job of being an intern, but also can work, for example, in a sort of rural area where there are high levels of social determinants of health.
Thank you very much, Professor Roberts. We have some more questions. If not, I think I can open this question for the panelists. If you have any question, or you can just raise your hands and.
Just while you were waiting, the question came back up again. Yeah, I think it was when we've interviewed our students. We find that in the first year, in the preclinical year, they're often developing an identity as a scientist or as an anatomist, as a physiologist, as a biochemist, rather than as being a doctor. And I think that, you know, in our courses, we've always sought to have very early clinical experience from day one, so that they relate the science to the professional identity of being a doctor, rather than transitioning from student into being a scientist, then being into a medical student, then being into a doctor.
Okay, there's a question here from Mrs. Kirutika. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ahmad Badruddin. I am from Nursing Academy of South Sumatra. I have one question. When we make a module for completing the material of our subject, how to make the module more colorful when our students still bored with our materials, or how to figure out the problem as we are a lecturer in our institution. Thanks.
Okay. So, looking at your question, so you're talking about how do you make it more colorful. So I'm thinking it is more about, students easily get, yeah, that's what you said. Students easily get bored and distracted using the material, bored with the material, and how then do we, so this really goes towards, attention. So how do we make sure that students are that they are not distracted in their classes? How do you provide them focused attention, or so these are the things I think you're talking about. So one thing that we need to be clear is that human mind is easily distractible, and our current technologies actually intensify this this precondition of getting distracted quite easily. So one important thing is that attention needs to be won over and needs to be addressed, and attention is something that we need to start to get students to start paying attention to. So if we want to do that, I think the first and foremost is providing structure. Okay, so in how you will engage with students. So sometimes because if you notice that anything beyond 10 minutes, students will start losing attention. So you will need to have, so it cannot be disseminating information much more than 10 minutes. So you will need to intersperse it with a number of activities in between, and also, so the activities also needs to, you need to have a change of or a variation, or create a pattern to feature variation. So sometimes, every class you go in, you do a lecture for 10 minutes, you give a quiz, you do this. And if it is a monotonous kind of repetitive pattern throughout all your lectures, then that also makes it, students then start to, fall into distraction again, because they see that routine. So it's always good to have an adaptive expertise, not to follow a routine throughout your lecture. So you need to have variations to your attention drift. So you have to have active engagement, sometimes passive engagement. You can have individual work, small group or whole group work, and things like that. So these are sometimes even using a simple technique of using student names will actually engage attention. So and with this, even within this Zoom environment, you also realize that it actually makes using names much more easier in this online environment, because you see their names, but that's not always possible in a large class. But then again, this is something that you need to think about, is to engage students. Connecting with them is one way of engaging as well.
Okay, I would like to invite maybe Professor, Chris Robert would like to add some, based on your experience for the answer.
Yeah, I suppose I'd agree with everything that Karathika was saying. I think another strategy is actually getting students to do stuff, because actually, so in the clinical, when the COVID came down, we had these small groups. We were all faced with having to do PowerPoints and pretend to be a patient with different diseases and stuff. And it was sort of a high level of stress on the, on all of the, on the teachers. And then suddenly we started saying, no, for the next session, I want the student to prepare on some kind of question, take it in turns. And so then we got to a stage where the students were then simulating a patient with a condition. So if we were doing, the guts, the stomach, the bowels 1 week, then they would actually research a patient and then pretend to be that patient. And then the other student would take a history, and they were actually much more engaged in that process. So I think, yeah, providing structure, but getting them to take responsibility for the learning, getting them to be more agency, more freedom, but that comes with the responsibility to actually provide material discussions themselves.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add on. Can I just add on a little more?
Sure, yeah, please do.
Yeah. So it basically boils down to how you deliberately design pedagogical activities that are signature attention activities. As you know, if you have read James Lang's book, it talks about signature attention activities. And then you will need to think about these activities. How could this help awaken your students to the wonders of your course? And also think about, you know, how these activities will be part of your daily, weekly, and monthly kind of thing. So it's not so that they know that how these can help. So one good example, I've read about few good examples. One was from an art course that talks about watching the same painting, going to a museum. So it could be painting, or it could be even in sciences, it could be an artifact that they are looking at, but you go back to that same one, but every week you write a different response. So the students' activity is that they come back and actually write a different response every week, right? Or it could be, you know, reading a particular passage or a particular reading that you have given, but you ask them to do it pairwise. So it's pair work, where they read, they pause, tell the partner about what it was, and then the questions that come to their mind and so on. So again, all of these pedagogical activities need to be interspersed in between. So it's all about interactive lecturing, even if you have to do lecturing for large classes, and active learning.
Yeah.
So these are the key things that you will need to think about.
Thank you, Mr. Gopati. There's another question here from, this is Yulia from Andalas University. Would Prof. Chris and Raghupati share with us about how you manage examination to eliminate cheating issue, please? This is really interesting.
Yeah, now it's...
Who will start first? Professor Robert?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, so this has been obviously a huge issues of contract teaching. What we've done in our university, we've gone with one of the commercial firms, Proctor-U. So that's the idea that it's artificial intelligence deciding whether you're cheating or not. And now that we've had the students' protests haven't been listened to, this has been a decision. It's difficult to know what Proctor-U and other companies like this are doing with the data. I think a proportion of students do worry about this idea that you know, a computer's watching them, is perhaps accessing the data. I also think that particular types of exams are very prone to sort of cheating, particularly sort of essays and things. We had a big scandal in the medical school a couple of years ago. I guess my feeling is that by having these sort of portfolio type assessments where there's lots of low stakes assessments and so the actual decision is made on a much broader base of information and gets a much more accurate picture of a student than you can get from a sort of a simple you know, sort of multiple choice test or a simple essay test. And I think the second thing is, particularly in vocational courses, I think we really have to cultivate high levels of professionalism from day one. This sort of thing, significant breaches which can get you out of the course on professionalism issues alone, but actually promoting a culture that the whole point of these assessments really are not to catch you out, but they're actually to make you better vocational practitioners, better doctors, better nurses. And if you work with us, the assessment is really to get the best out of you, but that's a huge ask.
Okay, Mrs. Ragupati, you would like to add
Yeah.
to that kind of, to the answer?
Again, if you're talking about eliminating cheating, I think it all boils down to designing your assessment tasks itself. So it's the attention needs to be so much more on designing your assessments rather than on proctoring. So that's my take is don't think too much about proctoring, but think about or spend more time or front load by designing assignments much more carefully. So there are a number of strategies that you can use. The first and foremost is making sure that your deliverables that you want for your assessment task are unique and specific. So for example, you could think about having assignments in a way that there is a context which is very much to your local context. So if you do that, that's very difficult for students to think about and do it. The second is making your assessments a little more authentic as well. All right, and another good example is giving students a lot more control of their assignments is one other way of thinking about it. And as I was talking about earlier, it's the reflective process. Think about asking students to provide evidence of the process of assessment itself rather than just getting them to just provide an output. Okay, but again, others would ask me about why, how is it possible for us to do with because sometimes the number of students in our classes are so large that I still have to use multiple choice questions. So even if that is the case, then designing multiple choice questions, which are of higher order thinking, will take away from, move students away from cheating. But again, even within multiple choice questions, when you do a quiz like that, there are many ways of doing it. You can have randomized questions. So 10 questions given, each student gets different question, randomized options as well. The way the system technology actually helps you do that, randomizes options, randomizes questions. Even some LMSs allow you have 10 questions. The system actually picks maybe only 3 questions out of the whole pool of 10 questions. So these are ways in which even for multiple choice, you can do that. One good example from my own university is multiple choice where our lecturer actually allows for open book, but he encourages discussions with peer groups and so on. Again, all of these are autonomous, collaborative, where they are formed by themselves. But then even though all the discussions happen, they still come back and do their individual assessment at the end, right? So these ways you make discussions as part of or as a feature of your assessment itself, then there is no cheating because you have made that discussion has to be a feature of your assessment itself. Yeah. I've actually written one on online assessments. Probably I'll post a blog post that I have on assessment and what support you can provide to your students. Particularly, I wrote this when the COVID started, so I will just post this on the chat.
That will be great, Professor Ragupati. This is from Julius. May I have your rubric example so I can learn from it? Thank you. So this is, I think that will be the answer for you for this question that you will share that with us about the assessment.
So they're asking about rubric example. I have a paper on beyond rubric. So let me share my paper on a book chapter on the rubric so that he can look about the rubric that samples I have provided there as well. And
that would be great. Yeah. Okay, now questions from Noor. How to control the impact of opportunistic learning in the community and how to ensure the community experience impacts students' learning and professional development positively. And then number 2, currently the implementation of Merdeka Belajar, we send students to community or industries. What is the role of the community and industries in their learning process? So this is for Professor Chris Roberts.
Okay, so there's 2 questions. The first one, I'm not sure that control is the right word. I think, as we've been hearing, I think repeatedly in this discussion, it's important to set up the structure around the learning outcomes you want from the program, and to think. And I think again we've been reinforcing in this webinar that the assessments have to change to this more sort of portfolio programmatic way for a whole pile of reasons. I think we have a negative view of community because we think, you know, all the practitioners in industry, they're all so busy. But I think many of them do have a love of teaching, and I think they do really appreciate a student round there. But I think there's also, we have the worry that they won't teach them the right thing. But I think by priming our students to have agency, to have self-reflection, to have self-motivation, I think they can work out the good role models in the community, but also learn from the bad role models in the community. Because after all, that's what their working career is going to be like. So I think having them sheltered and protected from this doesn't help them in the long run, because they're not able to deal with the kind of the conflicts, the complexities, the uncertainties that they're going to come across working in the community. So I think in terms of promoting opportunistic learning, I think it's encouraging the receptivity of the community to take students and to think about how they can support them, how they can, you know, how can the students do useful work maybe, depending on what the vocation is. And I think the second part of it is really about getting the students to appreciate that they have to be active learners and make the most of it. And I think if the assessments, as Kirathika was saying, the assessments are very carefully thought about, that they drive the learning in that direction. I think in terms of the sort of the rules and the systems, I think what we found in sending our students out into the community, and there's another really big project in the university where you know, all the different disciplines go out and actually work on a project that the community has set. So the project might be something about you know, drought, or it might be about some sort of, you know, electrical, you know, developing a software solution for particular things. So a range of different problems. So I think that if the community can think what they can get out of the student think what they can get out of the community, that's a dialogue before the students go into the placements. And then I think having expectations of professionalism for the students and making it clear that if they don't take up these opportunities, there's actually going to be consequence, and feeding back on the placement. So if placements are clearly unsuitable, then we would remove them from the you know, from the database.
Maybe I will add on to that. Well, is as you were alluding to, Chris, it's also about, you know, doing the interdisciplinary focus when you design your assignment. So you bring a different group, so that it's also a real, authentic learning experience, because that's how they would work normally when they go in. So it's, for example, if they're going into the community, the doctors, the pharmacists, the nurses, all of these. So the way you design your assignments can be interdisciplinary in that sense. And these form groups or project teams with different people in the group to do it, and that might make it a little more authentic as well.
Very interesting. If I could, like, if I am allowed to ask, there is some more question here. I'm sorry. How do we maintain the social accountability of our educational institution? This is from Nur Still. And our experience, if the learning is not graded, students are not motivated to study. Do you identify such experience? How to overcome this problem? Ms. Kirutika? Hello?
Yes,
Yeah.
just, the social accountability of our educational institutions. So one thing, being an academic developer with the Center for Teaching and Learning, the first thing that comes to my mind when we think about this accountability is also in our faculty development when you're working with teachers, to get to them to have a dialogue much more, not just about strategies and so on, but much more the larger picture of what's the purposes of education, the larger purpose of education. I think that kind of conversations within the faculties, within the departments is important to drive this social accountability, I would think, rather than the narrow thinking about technique skills within faculty development. So that's one way I would start at the faculty level itself to think about these. The second question was, probably I didn't get it.
Sorry, could you please go back to the questions? No, yang sebelumnya, the previous one. Yeah, our experience in learning is not graded. Students are not motivated to study. Do you identify such experience?
So this was, this is actually sometimes it's a little bit of misconception as well, but it's not that it's not completely true. Sometimes it does happen that. So one of the things I actually tell my faculty when they come for these workshops is, first thing is, when you go into a class and you start talking about assignments, grades, and so on, rather than about the larger picture of what that module is about, what is that they will gain from that, and what is that they can take back when they finish this modules, instead of focusing our attention about those, we tend to focus very narrowly on the assessment. So we ourselves tell our students that that's what the key is, the grades is what is important. So if we move away from that, but think and start the dialogue much more than just the grade, then that itself is one way that students will then start to be motivated to study, because they are seeing the bigger picture of why do they need to learn that module, what is that they will gain from that module, and so on. So that's, I think, positioning the conversations correctly, particularly in the first lecture, is very important, I think.
Yeah, okay. What about Professor Robert? Would you like to give comment on that question?
I was just thinking, I would just perhaps comment on the social accountability. I think it's very important for institutions, not only to serve the nation, the region, and also the town or city in which they're based. But I think that comes through a kind of a deep engagement with, so for instance, in healthcare, with the different healthcare providers. But also, I think something that's often missed is the voice of the patients. How do they, the consumer, the patients, how do they have input into the institutional culture, and that it's not just tokenism, that they're actually genuinely listened to. I think I agree. I think in terms of, does not having a grade motivate you? I think as students understand, in a complex vocational behaviours can't be captured by numbers any more than I can say that you're healthy because your pulse was 72, your blood pressure was 140/90, and your blood calcium was 2. I think we need a much more richer range of information to be able to say to students that they're ready for work or not ready for work.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Professor Robert. Now I would like to read. There's another question here. The question is a bit away from the topic, related to the current situation, where some students begin to fed up in front of their computers. How to encourage the student to enjoy learning in this pandemic? So I think both of you could answer this question. If you like, Ms. Ragupati, would you like to start it first, to comment on this question?
So one key thing that's happening in this situation, at least from where I am, and I'm listening to many other colleagues from other countries, one thing that keeps coming back is, faculty thinking that they have a 2-hour lecture that they need to engage or they need to do that entire 2 hours doing a Zoom session. So that's not how you engage students. As I was saying, the maximum is 15 minutes. You see, there is this Zoom fatigue that happens. Zoom fatigue is not, Zoom fatigue is because, when you are in a Zoom thing, you are faced with maintaining attention. The eye-to-eye contact is actually there. You keep listening, those kind of things, and then the Zoom fatigue actually makes it even more difficult for students to enjoy the learning if it is anything beyond 10, 15 minutes. So one key way is to actually intersperse it with active learning activities. So, it could be group work, it could be pair work, or even posing questions. So break the monotony of having just, disseminating of information, but getting students to do work, as Chris was saying, engaging them in problem solving, in work that they would be doing it rather than just listening to you. And anything that can be actually listened, if it does not have interaction, it does not have dialogue, then they can be moved towards asynchronous way of learning. So you just record and leave it there, so students can watch it probably in double speed, very quicker than what you would do in real time.
Yeah. Okay. Now, what about Professor Robert? Could you please make a short comment on this question?
I'm just going to suggest and put a link in the chat of a nice paper that we did a journal club on, the difference between emergency remote teaching and online learning, and just showing that, I think, as Karathika was saying, that a lot of people have reacted with emergency remote teaching, but there's actually a big science, and I think, rather than hints and tips, I think we have to get a bit of the theory of how good integrated online learning really works, and I think we'd be better at it.
I think we are about 1 minute left here, so there's a question. Maybe we can wrap up this last question. This is from Yalmiadi, and the question is, what is the question here? To meet the requirement of certain recruitment, someone needs to have higher grade. What do you think about this fact? Maybe Ms. Regipati can make a short answer for this one, because as we are running out of time. Ms. Raghupati?
Yeah, I'm just.
Yeah. Just 1 minute, please. We are running out of time.
I'd probably, for my.
Okay, Professor Roberts, please.
Sorry, for my 15 seconds, I'd say I think it's really worth looking up some of the work on programmatic assessments, Kees van der Weert and Lambert Schueth, because I think they've written about this really, really nicely.
Okay.
Yeah. I think this one requires a very
long explanation.
So, but in any case, it's about one thing we are talking about is someone qualified or not from his academic grade. So I'm also thinking he's talking about, when I talked about students do the grading. So it's also because the teacher actually provided feedback and so on. So based on that, the teachers are actually asking them to provide a grade, and so that way what you have learned, what is required of that particular assignment, and then you provide a grade.
Okay, I think I've got to wrapping up. Again, I want to thank you to both of you for taking your time, your busy schedules to be with us today. And it's really highly appreciated. And also thank you very much to all the participants who are still with us until this time. And I sincerely apologize if I had made mistakes. I thank a lot to both of the speakers. I think we could give an applause to Ms. Raghupati and Chris Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to hand this to the MC again. Thank you very much all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Diah, PhD, our keynote speakers, Professor Marsudi, Professor Chris Roberts, and Dr. Kirutika. Thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go on to the parallel session, we will have an hour to break. While having break, we would like to inform you the parallel session guidelines. 1. Please change your Zoom name to article number _ presenter name. For example, 73 _ Ares Albiro Amsal. Please refer to the attached file. 2. Presenters should join to the Zoom link 15 minutes before the session. And 3. Prepare your slide and video ready to be presented. We will back you up with the video that has been sent if you have a technical issue. We would like to remind you that the link for parallel session is available in chat of this Zoom meeting. And don't forget to fill attend this link after parallel session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.